Hello, everyone, and welcome to Sharin Stories. I'm your host, Peaks, with my two beautiful co-hosts, Sara States and Paul Christian. This is not a therapy session. You will not find mental health professionals here, nor are we a substitute for said people. We are just people sharing our stories with mental health. Today, we have a bit of a different episode for all of you back at home. We are actually not bringing on a guest, and we decided to do a quick little, maybe 25, 30-minute episode just on a few topics that we find are either important now or important for the show over time. So as we go through the day, I'm just going to present a question or an idea, and the three of us are just going to discuss it as we move along. And over time, hopefully we get into some funny and interesting conversation. But overall, it's just going to be about getting to know everybody. And
It might not be funny or interesting.
it probably will not be, but that's not the point. You get to know us a little better. All right. So before we start today, is there anything either of you would like to say, or are we just going to jump right into it?
Jump right in.
Yes.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. The energy is comfortable. The lighting is beautiful on all three of you, including me. I said all
All
three of
three
you.
of you.
All three of you, including me. Sometimes I speak in the third. But we are going to start looking at overall how the pandemic has kind of shaped society, how it has shaped us, and the different effects the pandemic has had on people as a whole. So I am happy to start off, but if anybody wants to take the reins on the opening statement, I'm going to hand a quick silence on my mute and see what happens.
I was going to say, I think Peaks should start.
Boom, Peaks is back. All right, Peaks is going to start. All right, so for me, I'll take, I guess, personally, what the pandemic has done for me is at first it kind of started off as, I don't want to say this because it is not to anybody, and I understand the severity this has had on people's life, but it started off as like a mini blessing. I was able to not see as many people as I normally would. Unluckily, I didn't have a job at the time, but I had a bunch of money saved up, so I was able to survive on that and kind of just enjoy a carefree, quiet life. Another one of my friends was back at home where we live, so we oftentimes would just waste the day together in whatever way possible. I started Sharin Stories, the website, before these two reached out to me and pushed me to actually do something with it rather than just sit on my ass and look at a website. I overall I was happy. It was a good place for me. However, over time, I've realized boredom has set in. Substantial boredom has set in. You get to a point where everything's the same. It's the routine of nothing changes anymore. There's no surprises, I feel like. You know exactly what you're getting when you want to see your family. Everybody's whatever is careful as hell. Like, it's all calm, it's all relaxed, but like everybody on the inside is just wishing, hey, I want to hug you. I want to I'm a touchy person to begin with. So I think it just kind of set me back a little bit in that regard. Where I sit today and where I sit with most people, I think that in the long run, this is going to have some pretty negative effects. I think especially for younger kids who are going to grow up, a lot of them being, I think hypochondriac is the word, someone who is deathly afraid of, like germaphobes overall. I think we're going to have a lot more of those kids in school right now who are sitting and staring at a screen for 7 hours a day rather than being interactive with a bunch of kids, and their teachers are going to have social issues, or just the inability to pay attention in person because there's always a screen in front of them. So I fear some of these things, but I also think that I'm hoping that these things will make people, when it all kind of goes back to normal and we can start like going out and not wearing like probably a year and a half from now, not wear masks or anything like that, people will kind of like jump on that train like pretty strong and really want to make a difference in how we react to each other and relate to each other. So I do hope that these benefits do come from it, but I think currently it's getting long enough that I have not seen as much like joy out of it than that I saw at the beginning when people were kind of coming to terms with it happening.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I agree. It's as like the pandemic has been really, I think for me it's because I'm also very social. Like I was going out, like moving here to Southeast Asia, I always wanted to like discover a lot of new things because I want to discover the culture that I didn't know about myself because I'm half Filipino, and it's just I really want to discover that side of me. And when the pandemic started, I didn't really get the chance to discover that about myself. So um,
Paul, we discovered that about you a little bit. Don't get me wrong. I met you in November, all right, in Southeast Asia, and we discovered that at least a little bit, all right.
yeah, and it's just like I wanted to get to know like my family out here, and I didn't get to really talk to them. And I had like a whole big family reunion, but I wanted to get to know them more. Now when the pandemic started, I didn't really visit any of them because that I couldn't go out or anything. So I wanted to get to know more of like my uncles on my mom's side, and it's just like but now I've learned that like I can get closer to my family without even, I guess, without even like seeing them. Like I feel like I've gotten closer with them just like going through FaceTime every day. And we didn't like before, like we would like expect like, oh, we're gonna go see each other on like Thanksgiving or like Christmas. So we didn't really communicate with each other throughout the year since we were just, oh, we'll just see each other and we'll just catch up then. But now it's like, oh, we've been catching up through like phone calls more often and stuff like that. So that's pretty been good for me. So yeah.
That's perfect because that like ties along to the fact that like people are going to be more social after this and they're going to make more of an effort. You're already doing it during the pandemic, so that is exactly kind of what I was hoping would be the result. I didn't think about even doing it now because I'm terrible at reaching out to people and calling people, but it makes sense that you are starting to do it more, and I'm hoping that means other people are starting to do it more.
Yeah.
Are the police coming for you? I hear like all these
Almost
comments.
always. Almost always.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So, beginning of pandemic, I had a very opposite experience in Peaks. I think I felt a little bit like the world was ending, but I think it has to do with the fact that I was in New York City at that time, and it really did feel like an apocalyptic situation. So that was kind of traumatic. But then when I came out to Buffalo, it kind of flipped itself on its head, and I felt bad at the time because I felt like I was like leaving the city behind and like kind of escaping in a way, and it just made me feel kind of sad. But it was for us, I think, like a safety sort of move, and we would feel really blessed that we were able to do so. But I'm also kind of the opposite of you, Paul. Like I'm not really, I can be social, but like I definitely don't need a ton of like social interaction to be stimulated. Like it's almost like too much for me. Like, like one time a week with friends, like, or a big group, like is perfectly fine. Or like even every other week. So that's kind of interesting because I got to like just further my own relationship with my, fiance, or he was like my boyfriend, then my fiance, then my husband during quarantine. So that's kind of interesting. And that was just,
Soon to be father.
Soon to be, yeah. Whoa. So that's crazy.
All during quarantine. That is
boyfriend,
crazy.
Fiance, husband, soon to be father, all during the pandemic. I never thought of it that way. Wow. But yeah, I think like this whole like idea that I think I've kind of adjusted now to this sort of life, and I can't imagine going back to like what I had before, which is essentially like freedom from like mask wearing and caring so much about like everyone else, the safety, and like all of these different things. Like, how do you go back to the before? Like, I don't know when I do or like how we do, but that's kind of like where my head at is now, is like, will it ever go back to that? I have no clue, and I don't understand how it ever will. Like the next time, I don't want to be on a subway with like crammed in like sardines, like where your face is like literally like next to another person's face. Like how? I don't know. Like, well, that's just scary.
That's so true. I didn't even think about just all these like public transport and places like that will just be out of hand. Yeah, I'm starting to think that like a lot of people will be wearing masks pretty normally.
Yeah, I mean, in Asia, you do it when you're sick. Like
Um,
you wear a mask, like to be considerate to others.
yeah,
But and that
yeah,
makes sense to me now. Before, I was always like, why? I don't like. You would see some Asian people on the subway with a mask on. You'd be like, oh, well, I don't know. But it all makes sense now.
yeah. I mean, I spent a year and a half in Korea right before quarantine, and I rarely wore a mask, but I was like the one off. If I was sick, I absolutely knew to though. Like that was the requirement. Like it was just expected. You just kind of like it just makes sense to me to be courteous to the people around you when you're not feeling well, especially if you're still going to work and doing all these things. You need to at least figure something out. And now I think hopefully that will make sense to a lot of people rather than just Asian and Eastern culture right now.
Yeah, I think this helps us to become more like hyper aware of like what's how we like almost like treat other people, or like just are considerate of other people.
I hope so. That would be another good uh, outcome, right? Another good outcome is like I would have gotten a haircut a bunch of times during this quarantine, but since I couldn't, I just created this beautiful head of hair, and now I never want to cut it again. So there are some good things that are happening. Yeah, yeah, that happened. We are gonna move on. We are going to move on from the pandemic. I realize that all these topics, the amount of time that we're giving is not too long. So there's always going to be more information to talk about. And we'd love to hear anybody who's listening's ideas on the pandemic. Shoot anything our way. We'll be posting them on Instagram in the coming weeks, or any of the next two things that we also going to discuss. Would be awesome to hear from anybody who's listening. So I'm going to jump in, and this time we're going to focus on a little bit more about the show, Sharin Stories. And I just kind of want to ask to you and myself some of the biggest takeaways, memories, thoughts that you had during the show that you think maybe could reach out to a ton of people, or just really anything that stood out to you that's important. I'll just start with one of the things that I seem to have noticed, and that's just the power of the written word. The amount of people that have gotten intensely better over time. One of the biggest things that they do constantly is either write a gratitude journal, write down all the feelings they had that day, uh, write out their own story to themselves. What happened to them over the past 4 years? What happened in the hospital those 2 weeks? Um, Anybody, even just writing a journal about your daily events. These things seem to calm people, and it really amazed me at how many people use this and how I don't, how I do not use it. It doesn't exist for me. I never think to write anything down. I'll take notes during an episode. That's the extent of my writing in a week, really. And I think we had one guest who puts a quote every morning. She writes it on a piece of paper, and then she also takes a picture of that quote and puts it on her Instagram. Awesome idea, right? It's just a good way to start your day. You have an interesting quote about life. while at the same time you're sharing it with other people, giving them the chance to do it. So the written word was a big thing for me. I do have some other ones, but I feel like this is more of a shoot back and forth one. So I'll shut up for a second.
I think for me, it's the amount of males we had on our show that I'm so surprised that like they're willing to share their story, and it's just like because as I didn't realize how like males are so willing to share kind of like their experience about mental health since as a society we think that like males should put their emotions aside and like just keep it in, but like I see that now that like society's moving forward and all these athletes like like Joe and like Kevin and stuff like that and Corey, and it's just they're willing to put their foot forward and say like, hey, like it's okay to have issues about yourself, and it's okay to share your story. And that's a really big takeaway for me because as a guy, and it's just I always been taught to just be strong about it, don't don't express your feelings, but now I've learned throughout this podcast even it's just like I can really inspire people and just by just sharing your story, so that's a really big takeaway for me.
Yeah, there's a bit of a suck it up mentality for a lot of the stuff when it comes to men. And it is nice to see that people are willing to come on from both genders and have a conversation about it. I think really that's the main goal for us, right? Like we just want anybody to be able to walk on here and talk for 20 minutes without feeling judged or feeling like there's an issue there.
Yeah, I would second the thing about writing that definitely is like journaling, gratitude journaling is a running theme, and it's something that I dabble with. It's not something that I'm consistent with, and I think like hearing all the guests say it over and over again, like this is what I live by is really interesting. And then yeah, I am always struck when someone reaches out to us or responds with like feedback about an episode directly to a guest or responds to like the questions of the week and stuff like that. I just think that to me is like so inspiring. Like it's just like that sort of engagement. Like I love that because it really does feel like we're having a conversation. And I think that's like really why this is so interesting to me is because it's like a bunch of little mini conversations with people who share a desire to open up about mental wellness. And I think that's really cool.
You see guests, it is one of my favorite things, I think, is guests reaching out, or not guests, but people listening, reaching out, wanting to reach out to the guests. I mean, that's just right there. It just tells me that it doesn't matter at the end of the day how many people have watched or listened. If one person was affected by it, like that's really the goal in the grand scheme of things. And we're trying to just make one person feel better.
Yeah. And it's amazing to me to see like some of our episodes are highly viewed. I mean, highly viewed, like
hell yeah,
by our standards.
Right.
And I just think that's amazing because it says something like that this person has a network of people that they shared this with because there's no other way that there would be so many views when like we don't have that many subscribers. And I think that's amazing. Like I think like Carly, one of our guests, she was one of our guests, has like almost 500 views on it on YouTube. And that's just like her network of people and humans that like love her and wanted to listen to what she had to say. I mean, it's just like that really was amazing to see.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think a huge thing is I'm hoping a really big thing with Carly's is just overall her age, because a lot of the people we talk to has been closer to the 27 to like 32 range. And whereas Carly is, I'm 21, I want to say, and I'm just hoping that maybe it's more of an like this younger generation is willing to reach out to each other and listen and like back each other up. Like I even remember like these social media posts that I used to put up, like 25 likes was like the coolest thing in the world. And then like younger siblings of our friends would put up a picture and there'd be like 1,000 likes on it, and it would be like normal. So like I'm hoping that engagement is like people actually caring about each other, right, and putting forth an effort. Another thing I think that I have noticed is there are similarities across different mental health issues. Things that people go through between like whether you have OCD or bipolar or depression or anxiety, a lot of time your reactions and the way your body adapts or brings about those issues can be similar. Whereas at the same exact time, I've noticed that two people with depression or like have completely different stories. Right. So this whole thing is just constantly something that people can interact with and be like, oh, I've noticed that. Oh, I relate to that. Right. One of my friends who just listens, after he listened to my story, was like, I had no clue that's what you were like in high school and college. And it's crazy how much everything you said like was the same to me. And I had no clue he was anything like that. Like he had these thoughts or issues. But then at the same time, like you just see these clear differences in everybody's stories and how each person has their own unique way of getting over it, or has their own unique way of it starting, or has a mother who drives everywhere for them, because that's the one consistency across all stories. Mothers are fucking saints, and they will always constantly be the first person on your side whenever they can be. And I believe that would be the case with my mother if I ever really talked about any of this stuff with my family or anything like that. And I have now a lot more opened up, but that's just something that I totally did notice. Before we move on to the next question, is there anything anybody wants to mention?
I had something and then I forget. Oh, I know what I was gonna say. What you said about like your friend, that has been so cool because a lot of the guests have been friends of ours or friends of friends, and people that you knew growing up or people that you had like relationships with, and yet no, you never have this sort of in-depth personal conversation with, even though like one of our guests I've known literally since we were like in kindergarten, never had a conversation like the 45 minutes we had on Sharin Stories. Like I've never had a conversation like that with her ever. So it's like we don't always want our guests to be our friends, but like it has been kind of a blessing because I feel that much like closer to them.
It is very nice. It is very nice to see people that we know willing to talk to us about this in a very public setting. I mean, it's not entirely too public yet, but there could be a day. You never know.
At least 4 people are going to hear it.
Exactly. Every time. Every time. And that's the beauty of it. We're an international podcast. There are people in Canada listening 100%. I got some family in Canada. Paul's living in the Philippines. He's definitely got a few friends listening. All right. We are an international podcast. All right. So we will now move on to our last question of our short episode. And I think I'm most excited for Sarah's take on this last question, but it's more so just thoughts and ideas on your current life, how you are doing with your own mental health right now. If there's anything that you've started doing, maybe even from listening to the podcast, that has helped, or anything that has caused issues in the last month or so. I will start again. I don't mind. So in my current life, I just kind of took a little trip to get away from my home for a little bit. Me and my one roommate just road tripped. visited a few places, and it was a very, very nice break. But we drove a lot, and it was also exhausting. Another thing I've been doing more is drinking a lot more. Um, it just seems like it's there. I'm at home a lot. We're not doing much. So I have been diving into bottles of wine more often than I probably should be. And I think it has been all right. It has been under control for the most part. No issues like on a consistency basis. Like this is not a 5 nights a week thing. Um, However, it's like sometimes it will be on a Tuesday night or something, and I'll just
And that's
have a.
like not usual for you.
That is not usual. Just so people understand who I am, I have gone months and months without drinking. Like it is not something that I think about or a lot of times want to do. It's not my favorite thing. I used to get pretty sick a lot of times when I did it. So that was a big deterrent for me. But even still, like most of the time while I was doing it, I kind of had this thing where I would go straight from being buzzed, which is like an okay feeling, whatever, to being on like laying in my shower, dry heaving. Uh, and that was like my jump. It wasn't like and it wasn't. I just never got that weird like the normal drunk. And I guess that has changed now. But like at the same time, I still can get sick pretty easily. So I'm not like getting to that point. I have kind of monitored myself on that regard, but I am definitely diving into a little more, which I think after this vacation and kind of going on a little bit of a drinking spree because there's once again nothing to do when even when you're traveling, you're still stuck in the house for the most part. Uh, I'm going to slow that down big time. Uh, that's my little tidbit on what's happening in my life. I am overall feeling good. Like I said, this hair has changed my life. I mean, everything about it. And really, I want to remain happy. So I want to make sure that I don't do anything too detrimental, which I think going down a path like this is detrimental to a certain extent. Take it away.
Uh, so I guess what I'm dealing with now is being pregnant in a pandemic, which and like not knowing anything essentially. Because okay, so like I'm pregnant, we're in Buffalo, which is not our permanent location. I'm in grad school applications, which are like auditions because it's for acting, and I have no idea what city I'm going to end up in after we have the baby. So like there's like very like lots of moving parts to the story, and I just not knowing for me is something that's like really heavy. Like I like to know where I'm headed. Like I like to have the year. Like I like to know like what long term, like where this is going. And right now, for the past like however many months, 6 months, like I have no idea. And that's been really, really, really stressful. Um, Not to mention just like general fears that like things from like, is it gonna hurt? Which yeah, obviously I know it's gonna hurt. To things that are more like yes, please, you're supposed to say.
If it doesn't, you have the highest pain threshold it exists in the world.
So I know it's gonna hurt. But it's like how much is gonna hurt and how do you handle that pain? I don't know. I'm scared. I would be silly to say that I'm not scared. I'm scared. Like, who knows? Am I gonna poop myself? Like probably like I don't know. Like all that stuff is like scary. And then there's like then there's like the other side, which is like, wow, I'm bringing a baby into this world and like global warming is happening and like they're gonna be responsible for like saving the world. So then there's that. So I feel like there's just like a lot of fear. But and like you have so much time to think about these things these days. You're just like, oh, I'm not like working like I usually work, so it's just like you have more time to like really think about it. And also you're like more isolated from your friends and family, so it's kind of like you're doing this somewhat alone, which I don't mind because I feel like it would drive me crazy to have a lot of voices in my head saying, "Oh, you should be doing this. Oh, you should be doing that." Like, "Oh, you look like this," or "It looks like you're a big baby and it's gonna be like crazy." Like, everyone has different opinions on it, which is totally fine. I'm not one of those people that's like it's my baby, just like leave me alone. But I also think I can appreciate not having all those voices in my head, um, and opinions like coming at me all the time. So there's good and bad, but yeah, I mean, definitely like that's where my head is at these days. And don't get me wrong, like a lot of days are good days where you're like, wow, this is amazing. Like there's a human growing inside of me. He's now the size of a Barbie. Like that's crazy. I mean, he can stick his tongue out inside my belly now, which is like weird. Like there's like all those sort of like little joy things that are like that keep you going and keep you like really excited and like moving forward. And that mixed with the fear is kind of like, you know, it makes for an interesting state of mind. But I think it's mostly positive. But you know, it's like anyone else in the pandemic. Like we kind of just deal with things as they come.
Yeah, there's not anybody else in the pandemic.
Well,
that
we're in
part
like
is-
a baby boom right now, like literally.
I,
Like
I guess that kind of makes sense.
yeah,
So
like I think we're in one.
my cousin had a daughter, and I just got a message yesterday being like 1 year old birthday. She lives in Canada. We have never been able to meet her or see her in person. Like this is a year now of the first year of her life, which flew by. Didn't even know we were close to that. Like that is insane. But like yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about stopping drinking every once in a while. You got a whole lot more to worry about than I do.
have to stop drinking for like a year and a half.
You do. You got you got to change your diet. You got a whole lot to worry about. So it's definitely understandable to be going through a whirlwind of emotions on a constant basis. But I mean, I feel like every time you get on these calls with us, every time we talk, you will have a pretty high energy and good spirit, which is amazing.
Except for that one day where you guys were like, something is clearly wrong, and something was wrong.
But you know
yeah, I guess it's like easy to tell.
Those days are fair though. Like you got it. You're gonna have those days. There's no doubt that wasn't your first and it won't be your last one. But like you said, you just keep rolling with it as everybody is in COVID, right? Awesome, Paul.
As for me, I think I've just been taking care of my mental health more seriously, and before this podcast and stuff, and I was just like, it's it. I'll figure out a way sooner or later to figure it out. But now, every time we discuss things about mental health, I've been just like meditating more and like exercising more and stuff like that, and it's just I've never really taken it seriously until we started this podcast. And it's just, I want to thank both of you guys, like, to make me realize that, and it's just amazing. I've been so much more happier, and I've been realizing more about myself, the strength and the weaknesses and the things I need to work on. And, and it makes me, even like, it's weird to say that it's like, the more I find out about my weakness, the more stronger I get, and it's just like, and it's just, it makes me realize, oh, if I find out this side about myself, maybe I can make myself better, and it's just really cool to see that like your weaknesses can like make you stronger, so yeah.
What I'm curious, Paul, what's your sleep schedule like right now? Is it still the same as it was at the beginning? Because just so everybody at home knows, like this man would like message us at midnight, his time, a bunch of stuff, and then at 3:30 in the morning we would all be talking because it would be like 4:30 our time, and he'd be commenting on our comments, and we'd be so confused. We're like, don't you sleep? And then like 7 a.m. comes around his time, and he's still up doing stuff. Like I didn't know when he slept for a while. I never understood it. Has that changed, or is that not a part of this?
I mean, like I think I don't know. I definitely
Yes.
sleep
It
a
has.
little, sleep a little more. So I think that uh, when I sleep now, it's like I think I start sleeping at like at like 6 p.m. here, and then I don't really I wake up at like 8 or 9, and then I don't sleep. I like sleep for like 4 hours.
All right, it's gotten worse. It's gotten clearly worse.
Wait, so you sleep like extra long one day and then you stay awake for like for a
No,
full day?
it's I sleep for like 4 hours in the day, and like when I wake up after that, it's like it's hard for me to like fall asleep. So it's like if somebody wakes me up, and it's just like I'm up already. So it's just like I'm already full of energy. It's like okay, so it's like hard. It's like I'm like one of those people that if you wake me up, it's hard for me to fall back asleep. So it's just like you know,
So
yeah.
don't wake people up, Paul. Don't wake Paul up, please. All right, all those Philippines,
It's like,
keep it quiet. Keep it quiet between his hours of sleep. We
so
need him running at 100%. No, I honestly, it sounds like for the situation, and I think overall, I mean, just doing this for all three of us has been beneficial. Just to hear people and to be able to talk to people, and yeah, I mean, I've loved some of these stories. I am so excited for the next couple of people that are coming on too. There's already a couple recorded, and then there's a couple more that we got to record. We have our first person who none of us know, and that's so exciting to me whenever that's going to be done. So I'm very excited overall about what's to come. Like I said, we did want to keep this a little shorter. We went a little bit over, but I think it was impossible to do it in the time that I originally said. So that's all right. We always thank everybody listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this kind of one-off episode, as we might do it maybe once a season or something like that, just to kind of catch up on each other and kind of the takeaways from the show, like we said, or anything that's going on in current life. If you have any ideas of what we can do, that is also awesome. And as always, reach out to us about anything and everything. Our amazing social media liaison at Sara States is a godsend when it comes to Instagram. And I know me and Paul are always willing to talk to anybody or hear anybody out on what they're saying, and just have an ear with also a voice to kind of give you ideas back. Do you guys want to sign off with anything before I say thank you and everything?
you guys are the best.
Yeah, that. And if you want to be a guest, please reach out.
Absolutely. Always find us at Sharin Stories. We are happy to have anybody on who's willing to share. It's just all about being willing, and we know these things are hard, so we understand if there's delays, if there are days you cannot do it. If you want to just give a mini story background, we do those as well. Just know that we understand in every way possible. So once again, thank you all so much for listening. And as always, let's turn that mental health into mental wealth together. Thank you. Goodbye.
Woo.
Woo.